Hi guys, this is the first of my videos. I will be covering chapter 2 of your textbooks on demand and law of demand. A very important chapter. It carries the highest marks that will come in your board exam. Everything related to demand, law of demand. The points we will cover under this chapter are the meaning of demand, the types of demand, what determines demand, demand as a function, the law of demand, the exceptions to the law, the movement versus shift in demand, and the reasons for a downward movement in demand. We will cover this in two parts so that I don't make this video boring for you. The first part, we'll cover the first four, and then we'll take the remaining four in our next video. So starting off, let's see what is the meaning of demand. Demand, one may say, is just want, but it goes a little beyond than just want. Demand involves a desire to buy a commodity. But is an individual's desire to buy a commodity sufficient? I may desire to buy something, but is that my demand? No. Desire also needs to be backed by a willingness to spend. I should be willing to spend for what I desire. Is willingness and desire enough? Still no. I may have a desire, I may be willing to spend, but am I able to spend? Is my desire and willingness backed by sufficient purchasing power? When all of these three are put together, then we call it demand. So in your textbooks, the definition of demand is given as a quantity which a consumer is willing and able to purchase at a particular point of time and at the prevailing prices. So a consumer should be willing to purchase, he should be able to purchase, and it is also in relation to time. So it is willingness and ability to purchase at a particular time and at that prevailing price. We then move to the second part, which is the types of demand. Demand can be of many types, the first one being individual demand and market demand. Individual demand is what you or me demand as an individual. When individuals are put together as household and many households put together, it is called market demand. So demand is that of one person and market demand is that of many individuals put together. We then have ex-ante demand and ex-post demand. Let's understand these. Ex-ante demand is more of a desire, or I may be willing to spend, I may have the purchasing power, but it still is only a desire. Whereas ex-post demand is the actual demand, that which I actually go ahead and demand or purchase. We can understand this with this example where we have this lady sitting at a restaurant. She desires to have many things, and that would be her ex-ante demand. However, for good reason, she would only order for some veggies and maybe a snack, and that what she actually demands is called ex-post demand. When you're learning these from the textbooks, which I suggest you do, please learn these carefully, because questions on these either as short notes or as one-line answers, MCQs, and mostly difference between do come on these. You also have another type of demand called composite demand. What is composite demand? Composite demand is that demand for a product which can be put to multiple uses. Okay, so when you think about it, if you have a product which you can use for various activities or to solve various of your needs, that demand might be more. Such kind of demand is called composite demand. One example that comes to mind is that of a juicer, mixer, grinder. You get these separately in the market and you get a multi-purpose, a multi-utility juicer mixer grinder as well. Now this juicer mixer grinder is one machine that does many things for you, and so the demand would be different from that product which is sold individually. So we have to understand, when we learn demand, we have to understand what is composite demand as well. Another example over here could be that of a pencil which has an eraser attached on the top. A demand for that would be more because of its convenience and multiple use, rather than purchasing a separate pencil and a separate eraser, where undoubtedly children like you will end up losing one or the other. The next important topic we are going to touch upon is the determinants of demand. This is a very important question. It is a must come question in one form or the other. So you have to learn this question extremely well. I'm explaining these points to you all, but I'm also suggesting that you definitely learn these. This is concepts we are going through. You have to also learn these from your textbooks to be able to answer in your examination paper. Wherever you have a problem you are not able to understand from the textbook, please do get back to me and I will be more than glad to help. So coming back to the determinants of demand, the first major determinant, like we all know, is price. Whenever we go to a shop to purchase something, the first thing we check for is the price. Okay, this is normal behavior of any consumer. So what do we know about the relationship between price and demand? How does price determine our demand? Clearly, logic tells us that anybody of sound mind would say that when the price of a product is high, he will demand less of it. And when the price of the product is low, he will demand more of it. This can also be represented in the form of a graph which will show us this inverse relationship. When one variable goes higher and the other goes lower, and vice versa, we call it inverse relationship. Let's see how it looks on a graph. While drawing a graph, you need to plot the x-axis and the y-axis, the point of intersection marked as 0. For this particular graph, we will indicate price on the y-axis and quantity demanded on the x-axis. So we see over here, as per our theory, that when the price is high, high at point P1, the quantity demanded is low at point Q1. And we can draw straight lines from these points to find an intersection point of D1. Let's say at a later stage, the price of this particular commodity A, drops to point P2. What do you think will happen to the demand? The demand will increase. It will increase from point Q1 and go to point Q2. The intersection of these two lines can then be drawn at point D2. If we join point D1 and D2, what we then have is called a demand curve. We can see from this graph that the demand curve then slopes downwards to the right. This is because of the inverse relationship, where when price is high, the demand is low. And when price falls, the demand increases. The second most important determinant of demand is income. One has to see what is his income to be able to demand accordingly. With income, we realize that the relationship between income and demand will be different depending upon the types of goods. We can categorize the types of goods into normal goods, inferior goods, and inexpensive necessities. What are normal goods? Normal goods are our day-to-day what we purchase, or things that we demand, like food items, maybe your eggs, maybe your meats, chicken, a dessert, an ice cream. All right. So what can we say about normal goods with regards to price, or rather, income determining the demand? Clearly, when my income goes up, I have more money to spend, and when I have more money to spend, my demand will go up. So when my income is higher, I may have an ice cream every day. But when my income falls, maybe I cannot afford an ice cream every day. I don't have that much purchasing power. So when my income decreases, my demand will also decrease. So this is how it will work for normal goods. Then you have inferior goods. Inferior goods, let's take low quality products produced in certain parts of this world, or things you get at a fashion street. Yeah. When my income is high, I will tend to purchase lesser of these low quality inferior goods. But when my income goes down, then I cannot afford high quality, high market, upmarket goods. My demand for the inferior goods will go up. Once again, when it comes to inferior goods, when my income goes up, I have more money to spend. So my demand for inferior, low quality goods goes down because I can spend on something of a better quality, which might be priced slightly higher. But when my income goes down, I have no choice but to opt for a more inferior good, a lesser quality good. So when income goes down, my demand for an inferior good goes up. Then you have the third category, which is called inexpensive necessities. This could be your daily uh, necessities, which are not too expensive at the same time. Yeah, for example, your meals. The demand for these products, which are inexpensive necessities, will increase to a certain point. I may start eating more of rice. I may start having more bread. But up to a certain point. But after that, no matter what happens to the price, it will stay, my demand will stay constant. Okay? So we have to understand the types of goods and how income will act to determine the demand for these different goods. Let's again look at this in the form of a graph, very important graph. Once again, we have our x-axis and our y-axis. On the y-axis, this time we will measure our income. On the x-axis, we will continue to measure quantity demanded. So let's look at, let's draw separate lines for each of these types of goods, starting with the normal good. Normal good says my income goes up, my demand goes up. So as my income goes up, my demand also will go up. That can be represented by a graph like this. You can see this blue line. As the income is, as we are going higher on the y-axis, we are also going further to the right on the x-axis. Okay, that means both are increasing. Direct relationship. What about the inexpensive necessities we shall look at next? Inexpensive necessities, we said, as the income goes up, it will increase to a certain point. But after a point, it will stay constant. No matter how much the income increases, the demand will start remaining constant. The third one is the inferior goods. This is an interesting one. We can see already from the above that there is an inverse relationship. So what will happen with inferior goods? Inferior goods, the demand will increase to some point, but after my income has reached a certain point, I will start reducing my demand for inferior goods. So it will increase for a certain point of time, but after that it will start decreasing. We can also represent this point where it makes a turn at the intersection of y1, which is the income, and q1, which is the quantity demanded at that point in time. Up till that point of intersection, the demand will increase, but thereafter, although income is increasing, the demand is falling. Okay. Similarly, we can see for the other two that the point of intersection of income and quantity demanded for the red line, which is the inexpensive goods. After that point it will stay constant. Okay, until that point it was growing, but after that it will stay constant. We then have the next two. One is determinants, one is taste and preferences. Very simple. Demand will also be determined by your taste. If there's a certain kind of food that you don't like, or certain kind of clothing that you don't like, it's not your taste, then you will not have a demand for those. So taste will also determine your demand, whether you have a demand, high demand, low demand, or no demand. Same with preferences. There may be some preferences that you have. You don't eat non-vegetarian food. That's your preference. So your demand for non-vegetarian food will be nil. Or you prefer to eat a certain kind of food. Then you prefer to eat pizzas. Then your demand for pizzas will be high. So your tastes and preferences also determine the quantity of goods that are demanded. The fourth one, again important from the perspective of your exams, is the price of related goods. Now when we talk of related goods, there are two types of related goods. Let's understand related goods by understanding the types. One is substitute goods. What do we mean by substitute goods? If not this, then that. That is substitute goods. The other one is complementary goods. Complementary goods is this and that. Okay, so substitute goods is this or that. Complementary goods refers to this and that. Let's take a good example which is used in most textbooks. Substitute goods, tea and coffee. Yeah. The price of one can affect the demand for the other. If the price of coffee goes up, then all coffee drinkers will shift to tea, because tea and coffee are substitute goods. Similarly, if the price of tea goes up, people will shift to coffee. Complementary goods is one and the other. So good example here is car and petrol. Yeah. Think about it. When the price of petrol goes up, not vice versa, but when the price of petrol goes up, automatically the demand for cars will go down. And if the price of petrol goes down, the demand for car will go up. You can see over here, it's not one or the other, it's one and the other. A car without petrol is useless, and a petrol without car is useless. Okay, so you have to have both. Let's represent these with graphs. Over here I have used the pictures of graphs because by now you would have understood how to draw the graphs. Some important points that I've highlighted in this graph. On the Y bar we are looking at price of coffee, mind you, and on the X bar we are looking at the quantity demanded of tea. So Y bar is coffee price and X bar is demand of tea. We look at point P and P1 where the price of coffee is increasing. We see that when the price of coffee increases from point P to P1, what will happen to demand for tea? The demand for tea will increase from point Q to Q1. Okay. If we draw the intersections and then draw a point to cut through those intersection points, then we can see that there is an upward shift to the right. Okay, that determines the increase in the demand of tea due to the price of coffee. Let's come to complementary goods. In complementary goods, on the Y bar we will look at petrol, and on the X bar we will look at quantity demanded of cars. So when the price of petrol goes from P to P1, from point P, which is the lower point, to point P1, which is the higher point, so price of petrol has increased. At point P, the demand for cars was at point Q, which is high because the price of petrol was low. But soon as the price of petrol shifted from P to P1, Look at what happened to the new demand. The new demand shifted from Q to Q1, and point P1 and Q1 can be intersected with the dotted line. Now these 2 points of intersection, you can draw a line across them, and you will see that there is, as the price increased, the quantity demanded of the complementary good decreased, and there is a upward shift but to the left, which means that the demand is falling because of the price of petrol. Finally, friends, let's come to our last two of the determinants of demand, which is consumer expectation, denoted by E, and demonstration effect. What is consumer expectation? It is just what the consumer expects out of a product. If the product is not going to fulfill the consumer's expectations, that product will have a low demand. Think of your mobile. If you are not able to click your selfies, if you are not able to chat but only use your mobile as a device to communicate like it was initially earlier, very few people had a demand for a mobile. But as the functionality grew, it was meeting more expectations of people. People could play games, children started demanding it, youngsters started demanding to chat. So as the expectations of the people grew, and as the products start to match the expectations of the consumers, the demand will change. Last one for the purpose of this video is the demonstration effect. What do we mean by demonstration effect? Simple. This is what you and me do on a daily basis. In today's world, this is probably a big determinant of demand. Demonstration effect means, what is my neighbor doing? I want what my neighbor wants. I want what I see. So my neighbor has bought a big car. I also have a demand for a big car. My neighbor has a demand for uh, a new paint on his house. I also see that and think maybe I need to paint my house too. So that is demonstration effect. Shah Rukh Khan wears certain jeans. I also have a demand for that jeans. That is how advertising works. So this is demonstration effect. Demonstration effect also has a big influence, or is a big determinant of demand. So these are six determinants of demand that I've taken you through. There are more points in your book. I suggest you go through them. The reason we've discussed six is usually this question comes for 6 marks. And so if you cover these 6 points and write them in detail, you should be able to get full marks. All right. The last point for today then is demand as a function. What do I mean by demand as a function? It means demand as a formula. Okay. What are the functions of demand? Very simple. We currently have gone through 6 of them. Yeah. So you can just denote this as demand of a product, denoted by N. Dn on the left hand side is equal to function. The F stands for function. Function of what is determined by what? In open brackets we will write down all those alphabets that were denoting the various determinants that we spoke about. The price of that product, the income, the tastes, the expectations, and you can go on. Okay, so that is the demand function. So that's all we have to cover for today. The rest of it will be in my next video. I hope you listen to this video carefully. I hope you take your textbooks, go through it. Remember, you have to learn for 6 marks, so you can't just write what's given on these slides here. You have to explain them well. I have explained it to you in words, but you need to be able to write them in a way that is acceptable to your teachers. So for that, you definitely need to go through your textbook. Like I said earlier, if you have any questions, something you don't understand, please do get back to me. I will be more than glad and willing to assist. Thank you for today.